Hey everybody, I'm Brian. This is Ben. Welcome to 4F TV, where we cover all things related to faith, family, fitness, and freedom. And in today's episode, we're going to explain to you why social media is killing you and everyone around you. I'm just going to open it right up to Ben because we have had many discussions about how daunting and jarring these numbers are, that we are going to show a lot more statistics to you in today's episode because this is a massive crisis on hand that I think not enough people are talking about.
Absolutely. And we do plan on making this a two-part series.
Mm-hmm.
Probably next week, covering things more in terms of the physical effects of current technology and social media usage as we've seen these large increases in the last several years. But today, more so in terms of how it's killing you and in regards to your mental health. And we have a lot of different statistics. We're not going to source all of them, but we will say that they are collectively gathered from typical meta-analysis type studies. So they're pretty complete and accurate. There might be some slight variances, but overall, the message that we want to make sure we're getting across to you guys is that our current generation and the ones that are following us have a serious battle that we are looking at in terms of the enemy that is all too close that we are unaware of. Some of the information that I came across recently actually probably dates to about 2016, 2017, but these studies go back to 2005-ish. And one of the things that has been conclusive in all of these studies is that right around 2009, 2010, there was a major uptick in all significant depressive or anxiety related episodes, particularly in, when I say kids, I mean like, middle school, high school age. And that was, not coincidentally right around the time that about half of our teenage population had mobile access to social media platforms. So I think it was, don't quote me on this, but I think it was around 2005 or 2006 when Facebook went kind of public in the sense that you didn't need to be affiliated with a college or some type of group or something like that to have a Facebook account.
And
Facebook,
2007 is when the iPhone came out.
Right, exactly. And so a few years later, all of these kids, unfortunately, have not just have smartphones that are dangerous enough in themselves, but they have Facebook accounts now, Instagram accounts now. And so the alarming thing, and one of the disparities that was really obvious, not that we shouldn't be aware of our boys, but as a father of two little girls, one of the things that stood out to me, and I will say neither of my kids are on social media, and it will be a long time before they are. But one of the things that really stood out is that some of these market increases in depressive episodes and anxiety related issues were significantly higher in girls. Girls typically have more mood disorders. Girls typically have a tendency to kind of internalize things, whereas boys might lash out and beat each other up a little bit or get things over with that way. But the increase in one particular study that showed around 2009, 2010, that about 11%, I believe, 10 or 11% of girls had a major depressive episode in the period of a year. And that number went to over 20% within about 6 years, and so from 2010-ish to 2016, we're looking at, a lot of those numbers sound small, 11 to 20, but really what that is, to over 20. But basically what we're talking about is doubling. And those numbers were pretty static from say 2010 backwards for 10 or 15 years. So we saw not a lot of changes in that regard, and then very substantial changes right when, kids had access to social media. And so the effects on college students compared to middle school and high school was a little bit different, but still, still substantial. And one of the other things that stood out to me as well is that the millennials, I guess that would be me and you, that were coming into social media usage when it was becoming more prevalent, had a much different effect from social media in those markers than say the Gen Zers did. And one of the things that's undeniable from these studies is that there very much is an age sensitive disparity between being exposed to these things. It doesn't mean that the stuff we talk about today doesn't apply to everybody, that the risks aren't there. The effects on personality disorders are not there, on moods and everything else. Just more so that since this is we're here for family and health too, for the parents out there, for the siblings of younger kids, it's something to be really conscious of, really aware of, is that this does affect younger children more.
And the thing is, we had this discussion off air before we started recording too, and this is going to be in next week's episode, tying into the health concerns related to social media. But it's just the idea that, nowadays, like, if a kid is rowdy, you put a tablet in front of them.
True.
So it's honestly like, if we're going to talk about the family dynamic in this discussion as well, parents, don't be lazy. Don't put tech in front of your kids to silence them or numb them, because you are planting the seeds early that, I will self-soothe with a device that is designed to constantly capture my attention, to mess with my dopamine responses, to mess with my ability to regulate emotions. If I'm putting this thing, if my kid is crying when I'm out to dinner at the restaurant, I talk to them like they are a human being. And if they continue to act up, and here I am, like, I'm not a parent, so you can call me a hypocrite if you want, but I used to do it with my sister, and I still see people that I respect doing it with their kids. They choose the harder option, which, just like when we talk about our health and fitness journey, instead of doing the 30-day shreds and 6 weeks to a six-pack, when you choose the slow, monotonous 12-month program that will guarantee you get from point A to B in the most sustainable way possible. It's the same thing with social media. If I put a tablet in front of someone, I'm taking the easy way out. I'm saying, distract yourself, take your attention, lights flashing. I know people that work at Disney Kids that say every show is designed to change colors, lighting, or sound every 5 to 7 seconds to constantly stimulate and keep attention from children. And the problem with that is, some of these meta studies and meta analyses as well have already talked about the attention span. We can't have conversations anymore. We can't respond to dialogue without thinking about a perfect quote or taking time to type something out. We can't hold attention to conversations long enough anymore. So we're actually getting dumber as a society, because every answer is at our fingertips. We don't need to critically think, and we haven't learned how to actually work through emotions. So when we start showing you guys some of these statistics, no, I'm not pointing the blame at parents 100%. I'm not telling you that you're a bad parent because you've put a tablet in front of a kid. What I want to make you aware of is, you've taken the easy way out, because you didn't want to be embarrassed in front of people at the restaurant. So you're like, oh my God, stop crying. Like, here, fine, have your tablet. Instead of taking the kid outside and talking to them, letting them work through their emotion, showing them that you love them despite how they're acting. You show them, if we act, in a barbaric way, we're not going to be partaking in dinner. But if we get more calm, if we work through the emotion, if we, as Jordan Peterson says, if we become more civilized, we can enter back into that dinner and enjoy the restaurant and enjoy the time out. But it takes work and it takes energy.
It does.
And if you stress yourself out all day, of course you have nothing left for your kids or for your family as well. So this is just, like Ben said, we have another part next week specifically around youth and adolescent with social media and activity and health and fitness. But man, comment below if you're hearing anything that we're saying now, and if you could see all the different ways we could tangent this episode, because there are so many things. It could come with the raising of children. It could do with marriage and how you communicate. It could have to do with fitness and health and how you carry yourself. Like, we've never been in a time where I was just talking to someone and they said there's more information stored digitally via the cloud, data, supercomputers in the last 5 years than the rest of human history.
Believed. Sure.
Absolutely. Because every day, every time you click the phone, every time you open an app, more data is being pulled, and it's
Mhm.
just going through algorithms that are trying to teach themselves through AI and the people running those programs. How can I get one more second out of someone?
Mhm.
How can I elicit one more response from someone? Like, there's times where I am like, I'm not going to get on my phone. And all of a sudden I look at my phone and I'm like, damn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, which I don't even use anymore, I should just get rid of it, are sending me notifications saying, look at the app. Look, someone updated their story and we know you
Mhm.
care about it. Look at this person going live. And I'm like, I haven't talked to that person in a year. Yeah, but they're live today. And
Sure.
it's so, man, I'm going to end up monologuing for quite a while,
No, that's
but
okay.
the things that we just want to bring to you in this episode, because as you know, it's faith, family, fitness, freedom. We tend to volley between different topics at times. Sometimes we go more into faith. We can go more into health and fitness, like we did last week. We can go more into, right now, this is turning more into a family episode just based off of my monologue. But one thing that I wanted to start the show with, to show you guys, was that a study found that 94% of participants reported feeling troubled when they didn't have their phone. How
Mhm.
many of you can relate? If you can relate to any point in your day, week, or life, you have felt troubled or distressed because you didn't know where your phone was. Comment below. Just say me. You could say troubled. You could say
Mhm.
whatever, but you're not alone. Clearly, 94 out of 100 people feel this way. And to me, like, all the other stats we're going to show you tonight are pretty jarring in themselves, but this is just ridiculous, people. Like,
Mhm.
we can't go a day or a moment without our phone without feeling troubled, or like a piece of us is missing. That in itself should show you that hopefully, instead of this getting worse, we're at a tipping point, and the tipping point can be reverted back to a better balance, as opposed to tipping to complete chaos, which
Mhm.
I'm more inclined to believe we're about to tip into pure chaos around all of this. But my hopes and my prayers are that we can revert back to a tipping point into something good instead of something chaotic.
Sure. And I think it's one of the things that you have to remember, both as individuals and especially as, to the parents out there, um, from the small scale things to the more concerning things like this. Sometimes you have to remind yourself that while you're in the middle of trying to make everything work and connect all the dots and pay all the bills and calm all the waters around you, you also are the one who sets not just the bar, but sets um, the atmosphere for what culture your kids are going to grow up in as normal.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't obviously, ameliorate or fix the things our kids are exposed to entirely, but we absolutely can greatly influence and affect the things that they wake up to every morning and the way that they go to bed at night.
Mm-hmm.
And so in some of the, again, back to some of these numbers that are concerning is, and again, some of them obviously do affect boys different than girls, but one of the things that really hit me, hard, was that the number of self-harm related hospitalizations that are non-lethal, kids cutting themselves, things like that, maybe drinking things they shouldn't have been, taking pills, whatever else it is that did not result in lethality. Those numbers, saw a huge increase as well around the same timeline, say 2009 to 2016. Girls aged 15 to 19 were somewhere around 62% increase in self-harm related hospitalizations that are non-lethal. And older girls, say age 20 to 24, still saw like a 17% increase. And the scariest part is these, 10 to 14, which is real close to the age of my oldest one, saw 189% increase in non-lethal hospitalizations related to self-harm between 2009 and 2016. So you're looking at almost tripling the number of and these are preteen to barely teen aged
Right.
girls. And the only big change in our society at that time was the prevalence and access to social media. And so you know, not to take a look at this from various influence and behavior aspects. It's not just the concern for the self-harm or the depression or that else. It's the nature of the things that contribute to that. And one of the things that stands out is that children at that age, I have a 10-year-old, and children at that age already have a difficult time coming home and saying, like, Dad, my BFF that's been my BFF since last year told me today we're not BFFs anymore, and she was a mess. I mean, she's a wreck, right? And that's right. I have to come in and be the human pillow and comfort her and stuff like that. And to just think about the fact that something like that can have such a detrimental effect on them as they grow through understanding their emotions and discussing their emotions. And one of the things that's alarming is the amount of bullying that we see online. And I'm not, I just want to say I'm not one to typically even like to use that word, because there are a lot of ways it's been kind of misappropriated these days. But I mean like death threats. I mean, like trying to post personal content about somebody just to try to drag them through the dirt or make them feel miserable or ashamed or whatever else. And girls typically have a tendency to do that more than guys do. They bully differently. And so while these obviously some of these effects, social media affect everybody, some of the things that stand out a lot is that the non-physical aspects of bullying and manipulation and stuff tend to be higher in girls.
Well, and I completely agree with that. Not only, this isn't just an opinion for all of you listening, like this is backed by scientific data and fact, but I want you to just think about it, because as Ben and I have discussed many times, but I remember my mother talking to me about this and just saying, man, back in the day, like when you used to have sleepovers with your friends, like all of a sudden from the other room, I'd hear, and we'd be beating each other up and like, go to your room until you guys work it out. And we'd stand there and in silence and just give each other faces like, F you, I'm not talking to you. And within like 5 or 10 minutes,
everything's cool. Right.
Like men tend to exert themselves physically, as Jordan Peterson, who we quote a lot, but he says like, there's always that threat to men of like, this could turn physical and we could fight right now. But there's something, I'm not condoning violence, but there's something awesome about that, because we tend to just let shit go once we do it. It's like we punch each other and we're like, you good? Yep, good. Yep. Awesome. We dab it out. We're fine. Women, on the other hand, man, they come after each other emotionally and psychologically. And it's like these crazy developed plans of like, oh, I'm going to tear you down over the next year. Right. And it's going to be like one thread at a time where you're not even going to see it coming. Right. And it's just sad to see that. But like, think of social media. Social media is that heightened times 1,000, where like, not only is this person who's already starting to go through, as Ben said, like, oh, my daughter's best friend said we're not best friends anymore, or we're this or that. Now imagine I go to social media. Now that girl's posting new bestie. And now I'm feeling even worse. And they got a filter on, so then they look even cuter and better together. And then the girl is looking at herself and saying, well, it's because I'm ugly, or it's because I suck. So depression goes. The anxiety to fill that gap that the friend left increases. The needing, and like I've seen videos documented on this. And just for all of you listening to, every stat we're referring to and posting and everything that we're referencing will be in the description below the video. There's plenty of websites that have the studies and the meta-analyses and more references. But it was the idea that like there were girls going like this, doing duck faces, hitting the right angle, and they feel ugly, and they're taking it and they're like, ugly. Oh, I got to get rid of the freckles on my face. I'm too white. I need to get like a Hawaiian sun-kissed tint on my skin. Ooh, I need and it's like all of a sudden we've created this culture where I can't take a damn picture, or I have to touch up and doctor this picture so much just to accept myself. But here's the problem. They have to stay here to get that dopamine hit. because the second they put the phone or the tablet or the laptop away and go look in the mirror, that's not who they see anymore.
Sure.
So now all of a sudden, everything in life is mirroring back what I hate about myself, what I judge about myself, what I'm self-conscious of. So I got to keep living through this lens or this filter. And that is just, it's so sad, because it's just like how Ben referenced, like maybe some of you didn't know this, but Facebook, you used to have to be a college student and say what college you were at.
Mm-hmm.
And then it became just socially accepted everywhere. And I'll tell you one thing about social media too, that these statistics are jarring, but the thing is, they heighten and expose what's already there. So if you come from a family that does not show love, it's going to be really easy for you to feel unloved going to social media or compare yourself to people that post loving stuff with their families. And FYI, nobody posts the bad stuff. There's a few accounts out there that I follow that are honest, but you still want it to be overwhelmingly positive, or no one's going to follow you. No one's going to like you. So you're already falling for the best version and the facade of someone. But it does expose who you already are. Like, I can be a little hesitant to move forward out of my comfort zone. Like, I was probably the last of my friends to get on MySpace. And MySpace was the originator with Tom. You had a friend before you even had friends, because Tom was your friend. And then you saw the psychology of, oh, I have a top 4 friends. I have a top 8. I have a top 12. That shit broke apart some of my friend groups, where it's like, why are you my number 1, but I'm your number 4? What's that about? It's just like,
I remember that.
God, what is going on? And I was so reluctant to get on Facebook, and I finally did. And like, I don't know. I probably made it in 2009, but didn't really commit to it till like 2010. And it's because MySpace was dying down so much. I was like, damn, none of my friends are on here to talk to. I guess I'll go to Facebook.
Sure.
And then it took me until when I transferred from junior college to University of the Pacific, that summer when I was filming for TEDx, my buddy and I got a job to film like an intro for a TEDx conference there. And at the end of it, I was like, fine, I'll get an Instagram. Everybody has them. And like, I want to post about the sushi that we just ate. I want to post about like the X on the square and be able to tell a story about what we're doing. And yeah, it was just weird. Like, I've always been reluctant to join stuff. And I don't know if it's it's me knowing that I can get addicted to those types of things. Maybe it's just me being like, I don't want to make time for more of these things. Cause like, I was reluctant to join TikTok. I joined TikTok, and sometimes I mindlessly scroll on that shit for hours. And I'm just like, I gotta go to bed. And you know, for Ben and I, we look at all these platforms as, it's also an amazing way to bring our message to people. It's an amazing way to sell services. It's an amazing way to like try to bring some positivity or goodness that can cut through the noise and the crap that's on social media. But I will say social media does have benefits. It's a way to connect. It's a way to get your business out there, your personality out there, whatever. But I think it's safe to say, with all the data we're showing you and what we're talking about, it's pretty obvious that it makes you more disconnected than ever. People are more worried about how many friends, followers, likes, and comments they get than how many people they can have a conversation with. How many times are you not getting together for someone's birthday, but you're virtually wishing them HBD and all these other things? It's just, it's sad. But social media becomes, and maybe I'm not going to use this term correctly, but it's like a black mirror, because social media will mirror back things to you, but it's like, it's a distorted version. It's like the dark side of what you see. Social media tends to reflect and elicit the negativity in your life, the less than, the things that you feel, it almost like preys on your vulnerabilities. But the problem is, it's like, you're the driver and yet you're an autopilot, because these things are built to keep you there, and they keep pushing the things you tend to look at.
Yes.
But they also want to control you. And yet you also have some ownership to take, because you keep coming back to it. So at some point, you got to say, I got to break the cycle. And this is the one positive stat that I have, but it's something I want to throw out before I forget it. Researchers at University of Pennsylvania also showed that limiting social media usage for 3 weeks to 150 minutes per week had an effect of lowering depressive symptoms 37%.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not going to lie. The first time that I read that to Ben, I was like, I don't know any mofos that are going to limit their time to 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, and take a 2-day hiatus from social media.
Sure.
So maybe that study is not even realistic to you. But if you're feeling depressed, what's it worth to you? Would you rather keep exacerbating and compounding your depression by looking at shit that's making you depressed? Or would you like to put that stuff down, go out in the real world, hug somebody? Like, you want to know what you want to know what would make you feel super loved, whether it's your parents, your best friend, your significant other, your spouse, go hug them and hold them for 10 to 15 seconds. The first few seconds, it'll be like, oh, this is nice. And then a few seconds will be like, that's a little awkward. Like, we don't usually hug this long. But if you just embrace and hold and breathe, that connection will start repairing the good things in your life. That touch and repairing, literally by you pairing with another person, skin to skin, heart to heart, breath to breath, will start repairing the way that your dopamine rushes hit, the way that your mind elicits comfort. I'd rather seek comfort from a hug or a conversation with a human being than a like or a comment on social media.
Sure. No, that's a good point, because in a sense, real connection or fellowship has been replaced by very vapid and superficial acknowledgments or likes, in the same way that we take, good food out of the equation and we replace it with stuff that literally strings us along from one insulin high to another. And it's social media and what it offers us is really like a mirage. If you are
That's a great way to put
if you are predisposed to needing assurance, having insecurities, having a proclivity for, other thing we want to talk about is the effects of social media on narcissism and narcissistic tendencies, is that it's a mirage. It looks like a beautiful lake and flourishing with all of these, signs of life around it. And really it's an inch deep and it's a mile wide. And by the time you've experienced it, it's, everything that it offers is pretty much dried up, and you're basically going from one high to the next, and barely making it. And I looked at a couple studies put together by the Newport Institute, and they had categorized narcissism in this regard into grandiose narcissism and vulnerable narcissism. And grandiose narcissism, as a term implies, has a lot to do with, feelings of superiority and entitlement. And then vulnerable narcissism has to do with the hypersensitivity to criticism and constant need for reassurance. And so they're, without getting too deep into that, what that goes to show you is that there are things that social media, offers per se, that really appeals to two very toxic manifestations of those tendencies, which is power, superiority, entitlement, and then this really, delicate and really weak, tendency to need constant reassurance. And what it does is it just feeds that. And I know one of the studies that they had done, I can't remember how many participants were involved in it, but it showed that, people who regularly post large quantities of selfies, like we talked about. Well, doesn't matter if it's a duck face selfie or the other usually prolific amount of inappropriate selfies that people are posting these days. It showed a 25% increase in narcissistic tendencies or narcissism in general. And so, what that goes to show me is that social media really is a magnet for these dysfunctions.
Absolutely.
it is a supercharger for the things that we have underlying in us as part of our fallen human nature, I guess. And one of the things about personality disorders is, they are created and maintained conditions. They are not the same thing as somebody who has schizophrenia or some other type of actual, again, neuroscience proven deficit that might need to be treated with some serious medication. These disorders are dangerous. These disorders are toxic to ourselves and to those we love around us. And what we do know is that social media, if it's not really seen for what it is and managed for what it is, it can be dangerous. I find it interesting as well that some of the creators for these different platforms and software have disallowed their own children access to the very thing that they're selling to your children, because they know how addictive it is. They know how potentially dangerous it is. And that should be in itself should be enough of a red flag to just kind of give your kids uninhibited access to social media.
Amen. I mean, if the creator of these things won't let their offspring use something, that should be a number one sign. And just as I was saying, and Ben definitely added to it, like, one, I will make the little disclaimer, like, don't go around calling people narcissists. Like, I think a lot of people don't understand true narcissism. They hear one TikTok soundbite or one Instagram thing that they read, and it's like, oh, you're a narcissist. It's like, no, that's also why Ben's saying narcissistic tendencies. He's not saying a narcissist. I'm not going to tell you, like, first of all, like, Ben is even more versed than I am in this area, but like, neither of us have degrees or education behind this other than self-taught, self-read conversations. His mother is in the field, so like, I'm sure they've had even more conversations around psychology and things that can educate in this arena. But I will say, just like I was saying before, whether someone is a narcissist or has narcissistic tendencies, it's going to be heightened because of social media in the way that we are given validation. And one quote that we came across in the meta-analysis was that, like, think about it. Most of the time when we're talking, 30-40% of the time, you're probably talking about yourself. If you're doing a good job, we were given 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? We should probably listen twice as much as we speak.
True.
But look at how it doubles, if not like 250% increase, going from 30 to 80% on social media when people talk about themselves. And again, this is influencer culture, because at the end of the day, most of the people, you see it obviously on TikTok, but especially also Instagram and YouTube. I know because there's people that I follow where I'm like, hey, every Tuesday your video is supposed to be out, every Thursday, every whatever. And I come for that person because I enjoy listening or taking in whatever that person speaks about. But you got to think about the other side of the equation. That person is getting famous for being themselves and talking about themselves and showing you about their life. So now all of a sudden, first of all, influencers didn't even exist 10 years ago, really.
Truth.
Like, really, the whole, when you ask a kid, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be an influencer. Why? Like, what? Let me just understand why. Because if you want to be an influencer because you have like an actual talent that you can share with people, or education that can better people's lives, or something of value. And I'm not trying to criticize influencers, because some of my clients have been influencers and they do an amazing job. But again, they also get sucked into all of a sudden their anxiety goes through the roof because I have to show up every day as this bubbly personality. And if I'm off, I'll get ripped in the comments. So they deal with their whole, like, trust me, when you say you want to be an influencer, you probably don't, because first of all, you don't make as much money as you think they make. Second of all, they're never allowed to be off. unless their whole brand has been being honest. If their brand has been, I'm the dark depressive one, I'm Batman. Like if I'm that one, I gotta be Batman all the time. I can't be a Bruce Wayne. But if I'm Bruce Wayne balling out all the time, I can't be anything other than Bruce Wayne. Like, and if I'm happy-go-lucky, if I get real about stuff, maybe if you get big enough, you can share it and people will respect it.
Absolutely.
The thing is, you're going to get just as much backlash for not being what someone wanted you to be, because you showed up that way all the time and you promised to be a certain way. And now all of a sudden your happiness, like, you are going to get more and more narcissistic tendencies when your followers go up and you're posting about yourself and your likes go up and your comments go up. And all of a sudden you get this God complex, because it's like, oh man, people love me. People love what I talk about. People tell me how much I've changed their lives and it's so great. And it's just like, yeah. But then on the other side of it is you're never allowed to be human. The second you're off, the second you change platforms, the second people thought I was the funny guy, and when I don't want to be the funny guy anymore, I have no platform. People liked me because I was the fat guy, but then when I went on a weight loss journey for my health, nobody could relate to the skinny guy that was funny. They liked the fat funny guy.
True.
Like, there's people all over the internet that talk about that stuff, where it's like, dude, I had 2 million subs on YouTube. I did a weight loss journey for 6 months. Nobody watches my shit anymore because I'm not fat anymore.
Right.
So it's just those things where, like, if you have narcissistic tendencies, or you have tendencies to, I guess this is one way to put it, self-love, but not in a way of accepting yourself, but in like being grandiose and like talking about how wonderful you are all the time without having any humility or any sense of being grounded in something bigger than yourself or outside of yourself. All it's going to do is compound and get very, very bad on social media. And the problem is, you could get way too big for your own good before something happens, or you're going to get crushed from the beginning. Because I think a lot of people too go and look at the person that has, 500,000 followers, 2 million subs on YouTube, and they talk about how it took them 3 years to do it. And they're like, oh, well, I'm going to start doing it. And you start trying and you see no success, and you realize how much harder it is to do this stuff. And then you feel shitty about yourself. So it's like, that's where the depression can come in a lot too. And like, one thing that I want to warn you all of, because again, we saw this from the meta-analyses, where people who spend more than 5 hours a day on electronic devices are 71% more likely to exhibit suicide risk factors. Wow. That doesn't mean there's a 71% increase in suicide, because we would see like an insane drop in population, but just the fact that people are thinking and considering ending their life because they're spending more time here than they are out here. Yeah. That's a huge problem. And it breaks my heart, because obviously we're talking to you on a platform right now. So it feels ironic or hypocritical that it's like you're either watching us on this or a laptop to get this information. But I'm hoping that, since we're only like 30 minutes into this thing, here's our selfless plug to say, stop watching this. If you learned enough, stop watching, go outside. Go get your 20 minutes of vitamin D from the sun. Go hug your family members and friends. Go for a walk with your sibling. Go down to the beach and run your bare feet through the sand, or step in the water, jump in the freezing cold water and feel that rush you get from being in nature. I'm telling you, go right now, smash the like button to help us get this message in front of people, and then get the hell off the internet.
The thing too, the common denominator of all those things that you just said is be in the moment. And social media is the greatest distraction typically from us being capable of being fully in the moment. I mean, how many times do you catch yourself scrolling? How many times do you catch yourself with four different things you're doing on your phone at the same time? And, again, Brian, mentioned being hypocrites. I've said for a few years now, when, people have asked me before, like, why aren't you as active on this platform or that platform? Why haven't you posted stuff, more training content? And I've always told people, especially over the last couple of years, social media has become what I consider a necessary evil. And it's not to knock the tool that it can become, but it absolutely is a very slippery slope to overconsumption. And one of the things, the two greatest things that we see people dealing with and struggling with constant social media access and scrolling is comparison and fear of missing out. And I know how many people I've had discussions with, both clients and also friends, whether it's stuff that they're dealing with self-perception, or stuff they're dealing with still upset that they're single and everybody else is in a happy relationship. And I just sat them down and I said, listen, everybody else is not in a happy relationship. There might be a bunch of people in relationships, and what you see on Facebook is what they want you to see, or what you see on Instagram is what they want you to see. But that is not at all what's going on behind closed doors, the majority of the time anyways. And what it does is it puts within us this very false measure. We are seeing highly scripted highlight reels from people and trying to compare our current state of contentment based on that. So comparison and fear of missing out, and I think that's one of the things that is not just age specific. Some of these things that we talked about were more age specific in terms of the threats and concerns. And the other thing I wanted to point out is that some of them are. So when, Brian was talking about, limiting these things for the parents out there, I want you to look at, social media as anything else that your kids are consuming. Would you let your kids spend 5 or 6 hours of a day eating nothing but Little Debbie's Hostess cakes? And the fact of the matter is, not only would you not want to tolerate their behavior at the result of eating that much processed sugar a day, and in the same token, you're not going to want to deal with their behavior of being on social media for 6 hours a day. And it is absolutely empty calories. It is, very typically void of anything positive and very high risk for things that are negative. Mm-hmm. And so, I look at that as a metaphorical stance, and the fact that a lot of these studies show that that the cerebral development and emotional capacity for say college age kids or adults, or people who were kind of exposed to social media as they were coming into high school age, it has had a very dynamic difference of effect than kids who are exposed to it at an earlier age. And I liken it to not just that, but even something like alcohol. We're not here to tell you can't have a glass of wine, but the last thing I would do is leave an open bottle on the counter for my 10-year-old. And the last thing I would want is for her to start to try to deal with her issues that she has with that, through that avenue, because it's that much more dangerous and deadly for a child, than it is for somebody who has a handle on what it poses and what it represents.
Absolutely. And I know I already showed the statistic, but I'm going to run a couple in a row. So I'll give you guys enough time to look at this. But here's something that I just want to point out, because we're talking about the youth in this case, or, youth, adolescents, young teens, teenagers, but 8 to 18-year-olds spend 6 to 7 hours a day on some form of social media. That is anywhere from like a quarter to a third of their day. I want you to think about that for a second, because let's say they sleep 8 hours, which I think more and more is unlikely with kids, because they can't manage their time well. They get distracted easily. They have a lot of commitments. In my opinion, school is too long with too many things going on, but maybe parents that work full-time jobs would argue that. But either way, if they sleep 8 hours, which I doubt most of them are, which is why you're going to get into in next week's episode, we're also going to discuss children and their health concerns around social media and current lifestyles, because they're not getting 8 to 10 hours of sleep when they're younger and developing. You're underdeveloped, more metabolic issues, more chronic stress, fatigue, and just health related issues and stunts in development. But if they're sleeping 8 hours, and school is typically 7 to 8 hours, it's usually like 7 to 3 or 8 to 3. That means the rest of their damn time they're on social media.
Mm-hmm.
So they're actually trying to juggle sports, juggle school, juggle food, juggle social life with their media consumption. And again, if their average is 6 to 7 hours, and the people that average five or more hours a day are 71% more likely to exhibit suicide risks, listen to what's happening to our youth. Listen to who these media companies are clearly targeting. They want the attention of the youth. They want them to be completely consumed by what they have and be on their platform. It's honestly a form of like grooming kids for their attention, which is a whole nother tangent we won't go too deep in right now because that's a touchy topic for a lot of people. But the other piece alongside that is from 2007, which is like when MySpace got bigger, when Facebook became public, to 2017, suicide for kids and young adults increased by 56%. That's insane. And I'm not going to act like I know what the original figure was. So maybe it increased, maybe 10% of people that age were there and it increased by 56%. That's still not a good thing. That's still not a good trend. Oh, do you see how correlated these are? Children and young adults are spending 6 to 7 hours a day on their devices. When you spend 5 or more hours, you're 71% more likely to be suicidal, and the actual suicide risk has gone up 56% in a decade.
Mm-hmm.
That is jarring.
Scary. Very scary.
That is scary. So bravo to you, Ben, for not having your kids on social media. And to any parent or person that has an opinion saying like, oh, how could you be that controlling? Well, I'm going to go ahead and just pat Ben on the back and say, that's a place where it's okay to be controlling. That's a place where it's okay to show your kids there's way more value in getting outdoors, being healthy, being present in the moment, instead of comparing yourself to people that are lying on social media about how great their life is.
Sure. Social media social media poses a lot of concerns and risks that contribute to that. Aside from the bullying, aside from the comparison, aside from all those things that we talked about that are probably the largest contributors to that, social media contains a lot of really adult content. I mean, we're talking about, you're pretty well allowed to get away with posting pornography on social media these days. And if you're out there, you have an 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old who has, unobstructed access to social media. That's something you need to take into consideration. I myself don't have the mindset that, well, they're going to see it at some point in time, might as well just let them go walk, smack into it as early as possible. And so, I don't even look at it as controlling. I'm protective of my kids to the greatest capacity that I can.
That reframe.
Right. And because some people have said that, that's good that you bring that up, because I have heard people say that. My own kids have come to me and said, well, my friend so-and-so, she's 8, she's got an iPhone 13 and she's got a TikTok account. I said, well, she ain't living here, because if she was, those would be the first 2 things that are gone, is their TikTok account and that iPhone 13, And so it's important to sit and have these talks with your kids. And I've had these talks with my kids and had to sit there and listen and give them many examples of things that dad does specifically to make sure that they have lots of fun, and that daddy loves nothing more than seeing them have fun. And I'll ask them that, and they'll say, yeah, that's true, Dad. You do like it when we have fun. And I said, and there's sometimes when Daddy doesn't want you to do things, or doesn't let you do things because I know that they might be dangerous, even though you don't understand that. And thankfully, I've done a lot to cultivate that relationship with my kids, where we don't have temper tantrums when Dad says, no, you can't have social media, no matter what your friend says at school or whatever. And I think that's, the best thing you can do if your kids are on phones. My kids have phones. I have software that tells me if they're downloading apps. I have software that lets me access, where they are, and also be able to kind of restrict certain things and even turn their phone off from access remotely. And I would advise that for any parents out there. My kids do not have uninhibited access even to YouTube, because that's another platform that's full of all kinds of content that children should not be able to access freely. The other thing too that you can do, even we're just talking about access to tech in itself, and the screen addiction, is take phones away from your kids for a period of time before it's bedtime. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
When
Couple
I
hours.
Yep. When I pick up my kids and we might be taking a ride home in the evening before we make dinner and stuff, they can check their things in their phone. If they're playing a game online with their friend from school, they can do that. But once we get home and we start making dinner and doing things like that, it's like, the YouTube videos get turned off and the phones get put down, and we're either doing things together, that are non-tech related, or if we are going to watch a movie, we're going to pick a movie to watch. We're going to watch it together, and we're going to limit, as hard as it is, everybody being in their own world on their own phone, basically being in completely different places while physically being in the same place together. And it's a challenge. It is.
Well, and I mean, that last piece you just said, where we're physically together, but cognitively we're not. We're in completely different worlds or universes, literally metaverse, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. Metaverse. Right.
No, one thing I want to go back to, because I just want to make sure that parents understand, especially when we talk about the dynamic of girls learning where their worth comes from and men learning what it's like to treat a woman properly.
True.
If a boy is looking at every 16 to 24-year-old showing their ass implants and their fake boobs and their skinny doctored waists and all these things where you can edit photos and videos,
sure,
they are constantly getting basically pornography put in front of them, where they are getting stimulated and their mind is getting exposed to things they should not be exposed to. A young boy can figure out through growing, through hormonal transformation, what it's like to be attracted to a woman, what it's like to whatever. But if they're basically, they're going to find out at some point, so I guess it's better on Instagram than a Playboy. It's like, it's really not.
Yeah, no, there's been I don't have the data for this in front of me, but there's been a large increase, an uptick in sexual assault from young boys towards girls, and I mean, and an alarming rate. And one of the largest contributors to it is social media, what's allowed on social media. I mean, for crying out loud, I have female friends, and things that they tell me that guys shoot them in their DMs is stuff that, you'd be hard pressed to have some guy come up to you on the street and tell you, 15 or 20 years ago. And now it happens at light speed in ridiculous volume. Right. And what it does is it really, in a sense, perverts your mind to whatever this new normal is.
Well, exactly. And that's the problem. It's not normal.
It's not. Absolutely.
It's a new norm, but it's not normal.
Right.
First of all, women, I'm sorry. Like, here comes a radical statement. Your body is not your self-worth. Okay.
Truth.
Like, you have an inherent value being able to create life. There is something of value you're born with. The fact that you have been chosen by God to be able to create people to continue the human race is amazing. But I don't think God had in mind you flaunting your ass everywhere and getting as many likes as you could, or put enough scandalous shit out on your Instagram and TikTok that it makes people want to subscribe to your OnlyFans, or you actually get naked or just be a little more revealing and you call yourself an entrepreneur. No, you're not. You're a prostitute online. And I'm sorry, you need to be told this, because selling your body in that way, one, it's not. What type of man do you think you're attracting when you put that out there? Like, you're probably attracting a dude that's already got messed up issues around what women should do. And then when that man is used to consuming content of women that show off their body with no regard for any future relationship, you're also helping create the men that are going to abuse other women down the line. And no, I'm not giving men like a pass of it's women's fault. Men, be in control of your body, be in control of your thoughts and emotions. But you need a real man to show a boy how to become a man. It's not, a boy discovering what shit is online by looking at naked pictures of women or videos or OnlyFans. Because now all of a sudden you have a distorted view of what sex is supposed to be, of what relationships are supposed to be. You're going to have kids that are 16 that are going to be like, again, I'm going to get a little graphic. You're going to have 16-year-olds that are going to be choking out girls thinking that rough sex is the only way to have sex. And it's just like, what are we doing? There's no love in that. It's just abuse. It's like basically becoming a vessel for a man to do whatever he wants with, and for a woman to try to get worth out of that. And it's like, that is a huge problem. And that's going to be a whole nother podcast that I'm sure will get a ton of likes and phantom dislikes because YouTube doesn't show dislikes anymore. But like, think about what you're exposing to. I don't know a single woman who has gone through, any, what do we want? Adult entertainment that grew up saying, I want to be an adult entertainer. At some point, that was taught to her, or she was told her value is in her body. And then she got a bunch of edification from it with some subliminal and not so subliminal abuse that it became her life. And then it creates a really messed up life that she has to find a way to fight out of. And for men, you think it's okay to treat women that way because they're basically saying it is okay, and you don't know any better because your parents said, they're going to find porn one way or another. So instead of me having a conversation, man to boy, or mother to daughter, or, mother and father to daughter and son, you left it to social media and said, they'll figure it out. I don't have to have the uncomfortable conversation. And it's like, well, thank you. Thank you for that lazy parenting.
Sure.
Because that,
no, I think that those conversations that, they have to be age appropriate, obviously. And
absolutely.
I have unknowingly have been confronted with those conversations, with my little girls, years ago. So, I think both of them around the age of 7 asked me questions about why they see, and I don't know, if it was somebody else's Instagram account that they were on. They're not surfing Instagram on my phone at all. And things that they just see as, going about life, and knowing that there's certain things you're not supposed to be doing. Like you're not supposed to be out in front of other people with your clothes off. Mm-hmm. And I remember one time this was a very special moment, for me in my memory. And I'm sure there will be many more conversations similar to this as she gets older. But we were actually playing dolls. And I'll admit that I've been caught playing dolls quite a few times. And she said, and again, I'm a protective, over-involved father, and I have been from day one. And she said, Dad, Daddy, how come some girls show their private parts that they're not supposed to show? And then she kind of pointed to a couple areas of her body, and just the innocence and beauty of a 7-year-old that just acknowledged that she's seen this enough times that she started to ask me. And I feel like I just got hit with a hammer. I'm like, I was not expecting this conversation until she was about 12. Right. And here we are, which again, it's alarming because it means if a 7-year-old is wondering that's stuff that 20, 30, 40 years ago, a 7-year-old would probably rarely have even brought up because they wouldn't be exposed to those types of new normals per se. And I'm thinking, man, how do I frame this answer for a 7-year-old? Because she is completely and totally innocent, and I'm going to make sure I protect that innocence as long as I possibly can. And and I don't mean naivety, I mean true innocence. And I said, well, this is kind of comical. I said, unintentionally comical. I said, some girls kind of, they want to get the wrong kind of attention. And of course, at 7 years old, all she knows is, when you're acting out, you're getting the wrong kind of attention. So she said, oh, you mean like they want a spanking? and I lost it. I had to reel it back in and pull it back together because this was a daddy and daughter moment and a necessary one. And so I said, no, not, I said, not,
Yes, but no.
I said, not so much that.
Wow.
I said, okay. I said, remember how we talked about you having a boyfriend one day? And she goes, yeah. And I said, we make this joke that one day when she's 30, I think we've recently negotiated down to 20 or something like that. And I said, would you rather some guy who's, is kind of looking at you, would you rather him walk in a room and look at you and say, oh man, she's really hot? Or would you rather him see you walk by and listen to you talk and see you for a few minutes and think, man, that's like the coolest girl I've ever seen?
Right.
And she just kind of smiled at me and she goes, definitely coolest girl, And so it was one of those things where it's, we have to realize that there are these things that our kids are being exposed to at earlier and earlier ages. And we do have to be ready to have those conversations at some moments. And they're not easy. They're sometimes awkward, and they're sometimes sprung upon us when we do not at all expect those conversations to come up. And, my encouragement to you is, if you have kids, I don't want to say there are no wrong answers, but be worried less about the wrong answers and worry more about being present and making sure that you are kind of ready to have these learning, teaching moments with your little ones.
Oh man. I can't even imagine being in the middle of what I thought was just a playful, fun time and then being hit with that. But
I was just playing dolls, minding my business, man.
I know,
I just
man.
got hit with this thing.
But it made me think, I mean, just how messed up the world is, right? Because like the news just broke recently around Kim Kardashian's kid with Kanye. I think it was Northwest is the kid's name, who's like 4. And on her phone, as a 4-year-old, sees this thing that says Kim Kardashian sex tape in a picture and is like, what is this? Just like, what is that? And she's like, oh my God, what is this? And it's just like, first of all, why does your 4-year-old have a phone?
Right. Sure.
And maybe I'm getting the age wrong. Maybe they have a 7-year-old as well. Maybe I'm getting the dates mixed up, but I'm pretty sure it was a 4-year-old because they have a couple kids. But it's like, you didn't think that was going to come up at some point? You think that's just never going to circulate again? Like, it's crazy that it hit a 4-year-old or 7, even if it's the 7-year-old, if that's how old their oldest is, it's like, that's not okay. That's a 7-year-old who's in first grade hearing about a sex tape on their phone of their parent.
Absolutely.
And the worst part about the whole thing is like, it's leaked, but it's already come out that like Kim was the mastermind behind that, supposedly, where it's like, hey, like she had something with Ryan Seacrest and something else and with Chris, the mom, who's like the marketing, the manager and publicist, but Kim's like a marketing genius and is like, okay, I want to do this show. And Ryan Seacrest is like, yeah, but you're a nobody. Like, you're not really anybody. And it's like, oh, well, what if I go and have a sex tape with somebody and it gets leaked and then I become all over the tabloids, that all of a sudden, of course, a show spins out of this. Sure. And now look at them. They have one of the longest running shows, especially for like a family show. And they have multiple billionaires in the family or like almost billionaires. It's because of their body and sex image. It's not because, I'm sorry, like clearly Kim knows how to market. She's a marketing genius. Clearly Kylie or Kendall, whoever it was that did the makeup line, like broke the internet in 13 minutes because of selling like literally like $100 million worth of makeup in less than an hour or something like that. Like, it was insane. And they've leveraged their platform and they clearly have marketing and influencing skills, but it's like, but it's still all based around self-image and sex. Like, to me, like I wouldn't want that imagery. I wouldn't want that for my daughter. I wouldn't want that for my wife, for any woman. There's like bigger things. And, to any of you that are saying like I'm being sexist or I'm being like old school, like women should be able to do whatever they want. It's like, you do have the ability to do whatever you want, but I also have the freedom to choose that I don't like that. That's not the type of woman that I would choose preferentially, because that's not a good value in my life.
Sure. And all that all of those examples or representations just reaffirm the importance that culture is going to have its ebb and flow and changes. And if you do enough anthropology and history, you will see, we reference things like the Dark Ages and some pretty vile, crazy stuff that went on, that was pretty macabre and terrible. And as we look through history, we see certain penchants or proclivities that mankind has, and they do surface every once in a while, and sometimes in terrible ways. And the onset of technology that we have today, and this is a whole other conversation to get into, but for those of you who are against what Brian says in some very fundamental way, there are absolutely very, very factually strongly proven ties between the normalcy and the increased commercialization of pornography and human trafficking. So when we look at the number of children that are missing today, it very much has to do with not just, the existence of pornography has been around for a long time, but the normalizing of it, the commercializing of it abroad, and then obviously how terrible the nature of it has become, and access to it. So that's something to take into consideration, is that we're not here saying that nobody has the right to their own choices or decisions. We are here talking about things that we find to be valuable and find to be pillars or principles of raising our kids and protecting our kids from the dangers that are out there. And the data we shared today, the statistics we shared today, in a whole, or in totality, really show us that there are significant and alarming threats, not just to people in general, but especially those ages.
And I'll wrap us up, because I think what Ben just said is a good transition for next week's episode, where we're still going to be talking about how social media is killing you, but it's more going to be how social media is killing the youth. So we're just going to add a TH to the end of the title. But one thing I'll say briefly and quickly on human trafficking and sex trafficking, people say, like, if there weren't buyers, there wouldn't be sellers. Yeah, but there shouldn't be sellers either. So it's kind of the chicken or the egg in a really dark topic. Which one comes first? It's like, it doesn't matter. There should not be buyers, but buyers can tend to be people that have been groomed for a young time to think this is okay. And then sellers are also people that have clearly been groomed to think that this is okay. So since we always have the faith component, the two things that Jesus left us with to try to model our life was to love God with all our heart, mind, strength, and soul, and to love our neighbor like we love ourselves. So I don't think you're trafficking yourself. I don't think you grew up wanting to be sold or sell yourself or to buy someone that's being sold. And the dangerous reality is social media has also created a huge platform for child grooming and for human trafficking. That's why you see predators all over the place getting caught with fake accounts luring kids in.
Sure.
And that is a really scary thing. And we'll get into that in next week's topic, because we're going to be talking about social media killing the youth. And that's going to be on a very health related topic of how it's also creating less activity in youth, which is causing more obesity and health problems, but also things like this on a much more macro level, where kids are also falling victim and being prey to these horrible atrocities across the globe, but especially in the United States, in a way you may not think, just because social media makes it so easy to access these kids.
True.
So, we're going to leave that for next week. I want to thank you all again for tuning in. I know we went a little bit longer today, but I felt like everything we talked about was pretty damn good and important. So if you haven't yet, make sure you smash the like button on the video, because it really helps us. It helps the algorithm. It gets us in front of more people. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and turn the post the post notification onto all. We drop one full length podcast every single week, and then we tend to break down the podcast into smaller digestible segments as well throughout the week. But also comment below, let us know, like, how do you feel about what we just talked about? Do you want to hear more topics like this? Do you want us to keep kind of coming up with whatever Ben and I discuss throughout a weekly basis, or what we hear from clients and family and friends? Or do you have a specific topic you want us to cover? Make sure you comment below. But once again, thank you for tuning in and watching 4F TV, where we cover all things related to faith, family, fitness, and freedom. I'm Brian. This has Ben. We're sending you nothing but love and blessings and prayer, and we hope you tune in next week as well.